Hey guys, welcome for another video. You are watching.
Hello, welcome back, guys. We are on the section 8. So, we discussed about some of the attack types like injections, access controls, authorizations, right? So, while we coming through section 1 to section 7, we have discussed about a lot of possible security issues that can happen. So, we just overview on all the top MCP security issues that can happen in this section. We might have discussed about that in earlier videos, or we might missed them. So we had one section on to cover or to group all of them in a one slide. So yeah, the major thing is never trust the LLM input, right? uh, we have to validate that whatever that comes from a client side to the server side. So don't just blindly get passed through the information sent by the LLM that is on a client side. That is one of the major thing, because the LLMs are capable enough to generate a lot of malicious data, kind of Unicode data, which can parse the backend to bypass some of the auth checks or authorization checks, something like that. So we have to ensure always the validation on whatever comes from a client side should be strictly done. And exposing MCP servers to internet, they should never be done. So you should not directly expose that. You should ensure there is a proper local deployment in your K8s or Docker, and there is another way, something like reverse proxy or some of the ELB methodology, which you can utilize to route the traffic to your local deployed Docker to the internet, right? Like there are many ways that you can configure the network configuration. So that is one of the suggested way, rather than exposing your MCP server directly to the internet. Never ever do that, and ensure there is a authentication implemented on your MCP server. Do not give it unauthenticated if at all, if there is a business scenario where it has to deal some of the actions with the user data or database. Over privileged tool permission, ensure something like if there is a scenario where you have to read the files from the remote server, ensure the folders data that it was supposed to read as fixed as a base path. Only the folders or files belongs to that particular base path should be able to read, uh, so that you should prevent something like path traversal, and allowing the client commands to go through the previous directory or directories like etc, and steal some of the sensitive information, right? So we should have proper validation on that, and proper permissions on the tool. Like this tool is supposed to do only a read permission, or this tool is only permitted to the right execution, and there is a particular admin tool, even there is a proper constraints on admin tool with respect to what operations it can do. So, and if at all, if there is any kind of violations on the tool, on top of what at all it is assigned to do, we should log such kind of events for our incident response plans. And token pass through in anti-pattern, we just saw these in the authentication section. So ensure like this can cause to what confusion attack kind of thing. And verbose error messages, ensure whenever there is a MCP server might not understand the tools or data that you send, it might send some of the errors. Ensure such errors is not throwing any kind of sensitive informations like dbconfig. If at all, if you try to connect to the config from the MCP client and MCP server doesn't understand, it might throw some of the response data with actual config, something like that, right? So we should ensure that whatever the response coming from the server has filtered out or redacted the sensitive information before it's sending to the client. And no rate limiting, this can make the things worse. We should have a proper rate limiting on the request coming from the MCP client to the MCP server, and also we should have a proper limit on the number of connections we can make to the server from the same IP, same client, something like that, right? So we should have a proper validation on that, and it's also suggested to have a WAF implemented or a Cloudflare implemented on top of your MCP server, and mix trust boundaries. So using the same MCP server for different trust levels like public versus internal. It can have it can even give some of the security issues on table. Never ever use the same server that can use the public users and admin user. There should be a different routes to access or to call the public data and the dedicated users data and the admin functionality, and ensure there is a different isolated environment for production and the development activity, and ensure the sensitive and public data in a same tool should not be there. In a sense, if at all, if you have a scenario where you just wanna see the packages open to the internet, you can do the public API call. But if you have a service where you wanna see the tools developed by the users inside the environment, you should have some of the dedicated authentication or privilege to see or to view or to pull the tools, right? So have the boundaries established, and ignoring the supply chain security is also one of the major concern. Ensure if you are utilizing any kind of packages like npm or uh, anything based on your business use case, whenever you utilizing, ensure that package is something that you can trust, rely on, and ensure that particular package, if it is something new but you have to utilize it for your business use case, it will go through the security review from your AppSec team or security folks, because this can be a dangerous when, if at all, if that particular package gets compromised, that can uh, have a backdoor to all your customers who are utilizing the MCP servers, right? And if you having any kind of web-based MCP client that user can connect, ensure there is a proper session handling. There is a UUID kind of format, and do not use a sequential session IDs. Have a random generated UUIDs. That's one of the best way. And when there is a session validation, ensure there is a session validation against the user who logged in, and the kind of user ID that is trying to make a request, if it has some object level functionalities or user level functionalities, if is defined, right? And no security monitoring. This is very important. If at all, if you have some guardrails implemented in front of your prompts or sampling, and there is even authorization checks implemented properly, there should be a security monitoring, and logging should be enabled in a strict mode to ensure to identify and list the users who are trying to break out of their privilege and trying to access the applications or services to which they do not have access to, or there are verbs or context or kind of keywords which is trying to bypass your guardrails. So if we keep those items monitoring, it can help us to diagnosis any kind of security impact happens or security incident happens. And if at all, if there is a continuous monitoring on the throwing an alert when these scenarios are identified, can make a security people be aware about what's going on and be ready to mitigate or contain if any security incident which can happen, right? So the key takeaways are just repeating all of them. Never trust your input. Bind to local host. Do not expose your internet. Apply the least privilege policy. Ensure user service accounts, not token accounts when you deploy. And keep errors generic. Do not log on server side, and also do not send a sensitive information on the errors. And ensure proper rate limiting is implemented, and define a trusted boundaries completely based on the deployments or the use case or the functionalities. If at all, if you're using any third party applications in your MCP server, ensure they get audited. And with respective sessions, do not use sequential IDs. Ensure you use the UID formats, and ensure you are a proper monitoring and logging system that has been integrated with the MCP server to alert, log, any kind of malicious activities that can try to bypass the access control or authorization control or bypass the guardrails. Right, so this is about the common security mistakes that can happen. So in the next video, let's see how we can try to do a pen test on the MCP.